Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. So today's case, we're going to be covering the case of Zack and Addie. And this case takes place in New Orleans or New Orleans. I sound stupid pronouncing it like that, so I'm just going to pronounce it New Orleans. And it takes place in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. And at the time of this case taking place, both Zack and Addie were in their 20s. And what is just really weird is that they kind of became famous after Hurricane Katrina. They became leaders of a small community in the aftermath. This community had no water, no heating, no electricity, and they gained quite a lot of media attention because of this. However, things went south very, very quickly after the storm. This case takes such a crazy turn, like you won't be expecting it, because I wasn't expecting it, that's for sure. And it's because of the crazy turn of events that make this case quite infamous. I think it actually is quite infamous in New Orleans. I think it's quite well known, and there's quite a lot to get through with this case. So get comfortable and let's just jump straight in. Zack Bowen was born on the 15th of May 1978, making him a Taurus. We've got another Taurus case. I didn't do one for so long, and now I've done two, or is it three? I think it's just two in such a short space of time. He was born in Bakersfield, California, to his mom, Lori, and his dad, Jack. He had an older brother who was 3 years older than him. His name was Jed. So Zack's parents, Lori and Jack, had always dreamed of traveling the country. They decided, you know what? Let's go do this now. Let's go travel the US. They had a VW camper van. They packed up all of their belongings, their 2 children, and they went on the road. They went from state to state, starting in California. They went to Washington. They also went to Idaho. They did have connections in Washington. They did have family there. So I think they did stay in Washington for a little bit longer. And things were absolutely great on the road. This was like what they had always wanted, and things were going great. But the family did eventually settle back down in Bakersfield, California. And Zack's dad, Jack, did get a job at a local oil company. And this is when tensions started to grow between the parents when they moved back to California. It basically all started because Jack absolutely hated his job, and therefore this affected his whole personality, and he kind of took it out on his family. He started to spend a lot of time drinking, basically forgetting that he is a grown adult with responsibilities, with children, and he was just going out all the time, drinking with friends, and leaving Zack's mom, Lori, to basically do everything. And then out of nowhere, Jack all of a sudden just quits his job. Which, you know what? He hated his job so much. It's like, if you really hate your job that much and it's taking such a toll on your mental health, on your quality of life, if you can, quit your job and find a better job, find a job that you enjoy. However, Jack was just like, you know what? I'm just not going to work at all. And of course, Lori was just like, okay, so not only do I have to raise the kids myself, look after a household, I also have to earn all of the money to fund all of this as well. Great. There were times where the family literally had no food in the fridge because they couldn't afford it. So Lori pleaded with Jack to please get another job. Like, we need it. We're struggling. We cannot afford to go on like this. So in the end, Jack did get another job, but the job that he got, let's just say it didn't go down too well. So Jack was now working as a bartender in a strip club. And when Lori found out, because she didn't find out straight away, she was just like, really? Now, I'm not saying anything bad about strip clubs. I'm not saying anything like that. It was quite obvious in this situation that he got on that job for all of the wrong reasons. And Lori pleaded with Jack to find another job, which in the end he did. And this job was in Seattle. Like I said, they did have family in Washington, so that's probably why he did look for a job in Seattle. And the whole family moved to Seattle. And this is when Zack is 7 years old. And things went okay for a little while, like fresh start, new environment and everything. Everything was going great. But then, of course, tensions started to rise. Jack started slipping again into his bad habits. He was drinking a lot. He was staying out all night. He was partying with friends, basically forgetting that he was a father. And he just wouldn't come home till like 3, 4 in the morning, just drunk. And again, Lori was having to take on all of the responsibility of looking after the family. And it just got to a point where Lori was just like, you know what? I've had enough. I've put up with this for far too long. And Lori did divorce Jack in 1990. So then Lori, with the 2 sons, moved to Santa Maria, California. And Jack the dad stayed in Seattle. Okay, I feel like that was like the parents' biography there. So now we are actually going to get on to Zack and his life. So around this time when they did move back to California, Zack was entering into his teenage years. And can you imagine, he spent like a decent amount of his childhood like on the road, because obviously they were traveling around. Then they settled in California, then they went to Seattle, and now he's back in California. This is a hell of a lot of disruption for any child, for anyone really. And of course, he was also having to go through the fact that his parents were going through a divorce, and he's also starting a new school, which is never fun, is it? And as a teenager, Zack has been described as pretty awkward, kind of goofy, kind of shy. He was really into heavy metal and grunge music. And it's just been said that sometimes he did struggle to fit in with his fellow classmates. And it's said that a lot of Zack's awkwardness came from his insecurities about his height. Zack was 6'10", huge, so tall. So he really did stand out from everyone else. Also, he wore a size 17 shoe, which I was just like, what? I think that's like a size 16 in the UK. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm a size 4. So I'm like, I can't even imagine someone with feet that big. And to kind of cover up his awkwardness and shyness, Zack turned to comedy. He was actually labelled the class clown. He would quite often just fool around, try and make people laugh, even if it was at his own expense. Like, he just wanted to make people laugh. He kind of just wanted to distract people from like his insecurities, which obviously it was his height. And when I read that, I was just like, well, that's just Chandler Bing, isn't it? Even though Chandler Bing is not that tall, but you know what I mean. And as Zack entered his senior year, he was nominated for Homecoming King. And he really wanted this. Like, he really wanted this so bad. And even though Zack was quite well liked, like he was the class joker, everyone actually liked him, Zack never really felt like he fitted in. And he felt like if he won Homecoming King, that would be his validation from his classmates. He would feel finally accepted. But unfortunately, Zack didn't win, and this left him absolutely devastated. And I'm not just talking about like a little bit of devastation, like you get over it the next day. He was devastated. So devastated that straight after homecoming, he dropped out of school. And he still had half of his senior year to go. Like, he just dropped out. He was so devastated. He was so mortified. I don't know if he was embarrassed. I don't know, but he was just really upset and torn up about the whole thing. Now, I am from the UK. Now, I don't know. Is this a big deal? It's like we don't have homecoming king and queen. At least we didn't in my school. We do have prom, even though I didn't go to my own prom, but that's a story for another day. Is homecoming king and queen like a real big deal? Like, I don't know, because I only know what I know from TV and film, and that's obviously not always accurate, is it? I feel like his reaction is a bit extreme, like dropping out of school because he didn't win. So Zack dropped out of school, and as you can imagine, his mom was not happy. Zack had always done pretty well at school. He had pretty decent grades, and his mom had high hopes for his future, and she just did not see this coming. Like, he had shown no signs prior to this of ever even thinking about dropping out of school. And Zack didn't really have the best of plans when he dropped out of school, because Zack decided that he wanted to go and live with his dad, who was in Seattle, Washington. And this came as even more of a shock to Laurie, because since the divorce, Zack and his dad hadn't really had much of a relationship. They saw each other every now and again. They probably talked on the phone every now and again, but they weren't close. They didn't really have like any kind of relationship really. It's said that Zack's dad acted more like he wanted to be one of Zack's buddies than his dad. So he wasn't really the best parental figure, let's just say. I feel like we all know kind of someone like this. But this is what Zack wanted to do, and Laurie couldn't exactly stop him, could she? I mean, he was going to live with his dad. Like, she can't exactly stop him. Now, this is just my observation, but it kind of seems like to me, Zack losing Homecoming King, he wants to run away from all of his responsibilities. He wants to run away from the situation. He wants to bury his head in the sand. And that is why he's run off to his dad, because he knows that his dad won't make him face up to his responsibilities. Whereas if he stayed with his mom would obviously not want him to drop out of school, encourage him to go back, and therefore facing the reality of his life. But maybe I'm just thinking a bit too deep into it. So Zack packs up his bags and moves to Seattle, Washington to make a fresh start with his dad. And when Zack arrives, Jack, it's very confusing, isn't it? Zack and Jack. Zack is the son, Jack is the dad. So when Zack arrives, Jack, being the really responsible parent that he is, comes up with a plan on how Zack should now spend his time. Jack decides that Zack and himself should go on a road trip and hit up all of the party spots across the country and basically just party, drink all the time. And this is exactly what they do. Jack completely disregards the fact that Zack should be in school, should be studying, or should be doing something maybe responsible, and they go around and party and get drunk. They stop in Savannah, Georgia for Lauderdale? I can't pronounce anything, in Florida, before they finally end up in New Orleans, Louisiana. But when they arrived in New Orleans, the novelty of the road trip had kind of worn off on Zack. I keep going to say Jack. The son. Oh my God, it's so confusing. So the son was kind of over the road trip at this point. He was like, you know what, I'm bored. Drinking and partying all the time, yeah, it's fun. But when you're doing it every single day, day in, day out, it's boring. It was just too repetitive for him. And he decided that he actually did want to go back to school and he did want to get his qualifications. And that's what he did. He enrolled in a high school in New Orleans. He wanted to finish his senior year. And at this point, when Zack enrolls back into school, Jack, the dad, decides, oh, well, you clearly don't want to spend any more time with me anymore, so I'm going to leave you here and go back to Seattle, Washington. And that's what he does. He leaves his son in New Orleans. He really should get Parent of the Year award, shouldn't he? Jack. Oh my God, Jack. Zack at this point is 17. He's 17. He's still a child. Why are you leaving him in a city that he's never been to before? At least I don't think he has. He doesn't know anybody. Why don't you stay and maybe be a parent? So Zack is just left on his own in New Orleans, and he doesn't stay in high school for that long. He does drop out of high school again because he just feels like he doesn't fit in. So Zack is now completely alone in New Orleans and he doesn't have a clue what to do. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have anything. I think he's just turning 18 at this point when all of this is going on, and he starts to look for work, and he starts to look for work at some of the bars on Bourbon Street. Now, the drinking age in the US is 21. I think it's 21 in all states. I may be wrong. So I don't know if Zack lied about his age, or I don't know. Are you allowed to serve alcohol even though you're not 21 in the US? I don't know. And he did get a job at serving alcohol. He was like serving Go cups out of a window, kind of like take out alcohol kind of situation. And this is how he met a woman called Lana Shupak. He served her a drink. He started talking to her, flirting a little bit, and they instantly hit it off. Now, Lana was 28 years old. She was living in Dallas, Texas, where she worked as a dancer in a strip club. And she was currently visiting New Orleans just as a tourist. She was on a little road trip with a friend. And almost immediately after Lana and Zack met, they became infatuated with each other. And Zack begged Lana to stay in New Orleans. He begged her, like, please don't go back to Dallas. Stay here in New Orleans with me. And this is exactly what she did. She left her life in Dallas behind and she moved to New Orleans to be with Zack. And it's said that as soon as the pair started dating each other, they became inseparable. And it went on like this, like things were going great for a few months. However, there was one problem, and that is Lana didn't realize how old Zack was. She had no idea that Zack was 10 years younger than her. So Lana is 28 and Zack is only 18. And I don't know how she didn't realize this. Like, did she just not ask? Like, did she just assume that he was 21 or at least over 21 because she did meet him in a bar? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know the situation, but she didn't know how old Zack was. However, another huge shock followed pretty much straight after she found out Zack's age. And that was that she found out that she was pregnant. So when Lana found out that she was pregnant, she did have a little bit of a panic because she knew that she wanted to be a mom and she felt like she was ready to be a mom. But Zack is only 18. She didn't think that he was ready to take on that responsibility. So she broke the news to Zack and she was like, listen, I'm going to keep the baby, but there's no pressure. Like, don't feel like you need to be a father to the child. Like, I can do this on my own, like, no pressure. But Zack was like, no, I can do this. I want to be a father. Like, I can step up, I can be there. And Zack did step up when their son was born. They did name him Jackson. He absolutely adored his son. He stepped up, he was a father, he took on the responsibility. And Zack really wanted to be a responsible dad. He really wanted to be there for his son. I can imagine he probably didn't want to be like his own dad. So obviously with another mouth to feed, money was a little bit tighter than it was before, but Zack took on extra shifts. He worked every moment that he could to earn money for the family, to provide for his family, and earn enough money that he could afford an apartment for the family. And it wasn't long before Zack did propose to Lana, and the two of them got married. And then not too long after the wedding, they had a second child that was on the way, and they had a little daughter, and they called her Lily. So Zack is 20 years old. He is married. He has 2 kids. He's still working as a bartender. He's taking as many shifts as he possibly can. The money that he was getting from bartending just wasn't cutting it anymore. It wasn't providing a stable enough income to provide for his family. And this is when Zack decides that he needs a change of career. He needs something a little bit more stable, a little bit more guaranteed. And this is when Zack decided to enroll into the US Army. It was the year 2000, and currently in the year 2000, there wasn't really any war. I don't know what I'm talking about here. This is just what I read when I was doing my research. And both Zack and Lana thought that it was a good time for Zack to join the army. However, we all know what happened not too long after 2000. I don't really need to go into that. And it wasn't too long before Zack was sent to Iraq to fight in the war. And fighting in Iraq completely changed Zack. I mean, I can only imagine. His time in Iraq left him with severe PTSD. I mean, I can only imagine the kind of things that he saw, maybe even did himself. But there was one incident that just haunted Zack. He had become friends with a young boy in Iraq, and him and this boy, like, they had quite a good friendship almost. He was teaching this little boy English. He kind of became attached to this boy and felt very protective over this boy. And then this little boy was killed because he became friends with American soldiers. And as you can imagine, Zack blamed himself for the death of this little boy. I mean, obviously, understandably, anyone would blame themselves, even though obviously it wasn't his fault. And this was just one of many events that happened in Iraq that really did affect Zack. Zack was discharged from the army in 2004, and he was 26 at this point, but he returned home suffering with depression and severe PTSD. So when he returned home, he did return to Lana and the children, and then he looked for another job bartending. And Zack tried as best as he could to just almost return to the life that he had before he left, before he joined the army. But just things were not the same. Zack was a completely different person, and Zack and Lana fought a hell of a lot, and this eventually led to them separating. So Zack moves out, he is bartending, and this is when he meets another woman named Addie Hall. And he met Addie because she worked in the same bar as him. Now, initially, Addie was not interested in Zack at all. Like, she just paid him no attention. But Zack pretty much instantly took a liking to Addie, and the fact that Addie didn't really show any interest in Zack almost fueled Zack more. Like, he was determined to pursue her. So Addie always worked the shift after Zack. So when Zack finished his shift, he would stay around and hang out at the bar just to keep Addie company. And eventually, Addie seemed to warm to Zack, and they did start dating. Addie has been described as an extremely creative, extremely talented person. She was a free-spirited kind of person. She did grow up and was originally from North Carolina and then moved to New Orleans. However, Addie did have quite a troubled childhood. It is said that she suffered sexual abuse when she was a child, and this abuse understandably had a very lasting effect on her. She also had undiagnosed bipolar disorder, And when she was an adult, she also did go on to have quite a number of abusive relationships as well. And after these abusive relationships, she moved to New Orleans for a fresh start. And it's said that when she moved to New Orleans, she finally found herself. She finally started to become confident and independent. However, she still had quite a few inner demons. And she has been described by her friends as extremely volatile. And I'm sure the fact that she did have undiagnosed bipolar probably did play into that. But Addie was especially volatile when she had a few drinks in her. Let's just say Addie is an aggressive, angry drunk, and that is probably putting it lightly. And Addie was a very heavy drinker, so she wasn't the nicest person probably quite a lot of the time. She was just very, very nasty when she was drunk, but when she was sober, like, she was the nicest person. But when she was drunk, people avoided her. But Zack completely fell for her, and they started a relationship pretty quickly, and it became pretty intense pretty quickly as well. They would stay out partying like all night in New Orleans. They were both heavy drinkers, they were both doing drugs, and this like partying all night, drinking a lot, taking a lot of drugs wasn't just like one night a week or 2 nights. It was pretty much all the time. Zack and Addie's relationship was basically just one huge drink and drug binge. And obviously this doesn't really make the healthiest relationship. So things go on like this for a while, and they're in that beginning stage of their relationship, aren't they? So everything's all peachy. And then Hurricane Katrina hit. And this was just a few months after they started dating. Now, Hurricane Katrina, oh my God, absolutely devastated New Orleans. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't want to speak for anybody, but I can imagine it was a truly terrifying time, like a living nightmare, like hell on earth. And when the storm hit, Lana, Zack's ex-wife, the mother of his children, pleaded with Zack to evacuate. Lana wanted Zack with her, with the kids. She wanted to stay as a family unit. She wanted to evacuate. She wanted them all to be safe. But Addie and Zack didn't want this. And Lana was like, what are you talking about? Like, come, Addie can come as well. Like, don't worry, we can all evacuate together. We all just need to stay together. But Zack and Addie didn't want to evacuate. Addie and Zack decided to stick out the storm. They wanted to stay put. And I don't think that there was a mandatory evacuation at this point. I don't know if there ever was in Hurricane Katrina. So obviously it's their right, they can stay. But it's just like, Zack, you've got children. Surely you want to be with your children if you've got the opportunity, you know? Like, why aren't you going? But Addie had this idea in her head of Zack and Addie against the world. And she also had this mindset of what will be, will be. If they were meant to survive, they would. It didn't matter where they were. It didn't matter if they evacuated or not. So Zack and Addie stayed, and luckily they made it through the storm unharmed, because the place that they were staying wasn't as badly hit as other areas of New Orleans. But amazingly, not only did they survive the storm unharmed, Zack and Addie were actually thriving in this environment. I know that sounds really like crazy to say. There's so much devastation and heartbreak all around them, but they're thriving, they're living their best life. So during the storm, they had banded together with a few other people that had decided to stay behind, and they kind of formed this little community. They would make dinners around the campfire, they would also sing songs, like a sing-along thing around the campfire. There was drinking, there was dancing. It was basically like a little festival or something. They didn't have any electricity though. There was no water, there was no heating, no aircon. They were loving this little apocalyptic world that they were in. And it kind of reminded me of like The Walking Dead, you know? Like, you know how some people thrive and some people don't? I personally would be somebody that would die straight away in The Walking Dead. But Zack and Addie were loving it. Both of them would break into the bars in the local area to get alcohol for their little community. And they became somewhat ringleaders of this little community. They were like king and queen. And it's just so weird to imagine like having that kind of attitude to a situation like Hurricane Katrina. I mean, it is reported that they were completely oblivious to everything that's going on, because they didn't have electricity. They didn't have like a news feed coming through and telling them everything that was going on. Maybe they were completely oblivious and they weren't aware of everything that was going on and they were just in this little bubble. But it just seems so weird to me that they're having the time of their life during Hurricane Katrina. And on top of all of this is probably why as well I find it so hard to be in their mindset, is that Zack never once attempted to contact Lana or his children. Now, I don't know how easy or hard it would have been to contact them, but let's just say he didn't even make the effort. And Lana at this point actually did think that Zack was probably dead, and she was thinking, oh my God, how the hell am I supposed to tell our children that their father has died? So Lana is battling with the fact that the father of her children is probably dead. She doesn't know where he is, and she doesn't know how to tell her children, whilst Zack is partying and having the time of his life. So that's probably why I'm struggling to understand the attitude and the mindset of Zack and Addie at this point. And because of the little community that Zack and Addie had formed and the way that they were living their lives currently, this did get them quite a lot of attention from the media. They were seen as symbols of the survivor community. And the media actually did label them as the king and queen of the survivor community. And oh my God, can you imagine Lana, because their picture was in the paper and everything, can you imagine Lana opening up the paper and seeing the father of her children being the king of this little community? And he can't even be bothered to contact them. I tend to think too much into things, so there's probably no link here. But you remember when Zack lost Homecoming King? I can't help but wonder whether Zack being labelled the king of the survivor community was almost like, I don't know, satisfying that desire for attention that he quite clearly craves. However, of course, this lifestyle could not last for forever. People were returning to the city. I mean, the cleanup operation had to start, didn't it? The electricity came back and everything like that, and Zack and Addie had to finally go back to reality. And they struggled to go back to the way that life was before Hurricane Katrina. They wanted to stay the way they were. They wanted to stay in this little survivor community. They probably wanted to stay king and queen, and they wanted to keep getting all of the attention. Both Zack and Addie, but especially Addie, resented the people returning back to the city. They actually judged them for not staying and sticking out the storm. Both Zack and Addie thought that they were above everybody that evacuated. They thought that the people that had evacuated weren't true New Orleanians. Is that how you say it? Yeah. It's like, are you being serious right now? So when things started to go back to normal, even though obviously it was a very long time before things went back to normal in New Orleans. The recovery period was obviously a very long time, but when things started to go back to kind of normal, this really affected Zack and Addie's relationship, and everything just starts to go downhill. And this kind of all started with Zack's PTSD. So when the cleanup began, a lot of military vehicles came in to help with the cleanup, and this was a massive trigger for Zack. The couple's drug usage as well skyrocketed after the storm. They were just really struggling to adapt back to normal life, and the couple were turning to drugs to almost try and relive the high and the experience that they had during Hurricane Katrina. And another very big issue in Zack and Addie's relationship was Zack's relationship with his ex-wife Lana and his two children, Jackson and Lily. Eventually, after the storm, Zack decided that he wanted to get back in contact with Lana and start seeing his kids again. And I really do mean eventually, like it wasn't the first thing on his mind like it should have been. So he phones up Lana and he's just like, "Hi, I'm still alive, by the way. When can I see the kids?" And Lana is just like, hold on a second. She was like, "You can't do this. You can't just abandon us in the storm. Let us think that you could be dead and then just waltz back in here like nothing has gone on." Like, she didn't want Zack to just keep walking in and out of her children's lives whenever he felt like it. So Lana says that she's going to meet him but it would just be her. Like, she doesn't want to bring the kids straight away. Lana also tells Zack that she wants to meet Addie. I mean, if Zack is going to be having the kids stay over at his house, that means that the kids are going to interact with Addie, and Lana wants to meet Addie first to kind of like see what the situation is. And you know what? I don't blame her. So the three of them meet up. They come to an arrangement that Zack can have the children every other weekend. But Addie did start to get fed up with Lana always calling the shots. And Addie even started to resent Lana. And this was also reflected in the way Addie was treating Zack and Lana's children. So initially, she was all excited to be in the children's lives. She was excited to be the stepmom, but then all of a sudden, like when it actually came to her being a stepmom, she was really cold to the children. Like, she wouldn't even talk to them. Whenever the children would come round that every other weekend, Addie just went off and partied. She didn't want anything to do with the kids. And the kids at this point are 7 and 5. So they're at that age where they are aware of things that are going on. So all of this made Zack and Addie's relationship deteriorate quite rapidly. And they would get into huge fights. And quite a lot of these fights would end up with Addie being physically abusive towards Zack. After these fights, Zack would be covered in bruises. And then with all of this going on, Zack starts to have an affair. He cheats on Addie. Zack was bisexual, and when he was at a bar one night, he met a man, they started flirting, and he started an affair. Now, at first, Addie didn't know about this affair, but when she found out, she was furious, which I completely understand. Like, you're going to be furious if you find out that your partner is cheating on you. However, she seemed to be more focused on the fact that he was having an affair with a man rather than he was just having an affair at all. And they did get into an argument after Addie found out, and she was being incredibly homophobic. She was using pretty much every single slur under the sun, and she wanted revenge for this. And like I said, she seemed to be more focused on the fact that Zack had an affair with a man rather than him just having an affair. So what did she do? She got Zack's phone, called every single person in Zack's phone and told them that Zack had AIDS. This did result in Zack and Addie breaking up. However, Addie did not let this go. She had one final plan for revenge. So Addie got in contact with Zack and told him that she wanted to get back with him, like she wanted to give their relationship another go. And Zack also did want to get back with Addie as well. The relationship that he was having with that man kind of fizzled out, and he realized that Addie was the one that he loved. So he wanted to get back with her. So Addie was like, well, we need a place to stay. Like, we need an apartment. Let's sign for a lease on a new apartment. Like, we can have a fresh start. Like, a new apartment would be good for us. And this is what they do. Both of them go and sign for a lease on an apartment. And because of the agreement on that particular apartment, 2 months' rent needed to be paid up front. And who paid for that rent? Zack. And then literally the day after they signed this lease, Addie went to the landlord behind Zack's back and said to the landlord, oh, Zack is not on the contract anymore. Zack's not going to be living there. Like, just take him off. It's just going to be me. And the landlord believed her. I don't know if Addie tricked him in some way. I don't know. And that's exactly what the landlord did. He took Zack's name off the lease. And when they were in the apartment, Addie just kicked Zack out, even though he was the one that paid for the rent. And that was obviously Addie's plan all along. She needed somewhere to stay. She clearly didn't have enough money to afford it herself, and she took advantage of Zack. And when Zack found out about this, he was quite understandably furious about it. And of course, the two of them argued, and this argument went on into the early hours of the morning. And then around 1 a.m. that morning, on the 5th of October 2006, during the argument, Zack Bowen tragically strangled Addie Hall to death. Now, I've got to warn you, here the next bit of this case is weird, strange, bizarre, and just all around not nice. So not long after the murder, Zack committed necrophilia. So that means he had sex with Addie's corpse. And then after he had had sex with Addie's body, he lay down next to her and fell asleep, like next to her. And then the next morning when he woke up, he went about his day as if nothing had happened. And I struggle to kind of understand this. It's almost like he's had like I don't know what to call it because I'm not a medical professional or anything, but it does almost seem like he's had a psychotic break or something. Like that argument, the whole apartment thing or whatever, it's like he's just snapped and he's turned into this different person. He's killed Addie, committed necrophilia, and then all of a sudden he's like going back to his normal behavior. Where did that come from, Zach? It's like you don't just suddenly wake up one day and commit necrophilia, do you? I mean, ugh. Where did that come from? Like I said, he woke up the next morning and went about his day like nothing had happened. So he did go to work. And then once he returned from work, he obviously entered the apartment and he was like, oh, maybe I should clean up all of this and try and hide the evidence of Addie's body. And that's what he did. Over the next several days, he went about disposing of Addie's body. He cut up Addie's body in the bath with a hacksaw and a knife. And after separating all of the body parts, he decided that he needed to remove the flesh from the bones. And he thought the best way to do this was to cook the various body parts. So he cut off all of Addie's hair. I don't know why he did that. I don't know. And he placed her head in a pot on the front of the stove. He then placed Addie's hands and feet into another pot and he put that pot on the back of the stove. He then put her arms and her legs in a roasting dish and put them in the oven. He then placed her torso in a black plastic bag, which he did put in the fridge just to deal with later. And all of this took several days. Like Zack was able to do this and no one suspected a thing. There were a couple of people that lived nearby that were just like, is there something going on like in that apartment? But nobody really had like strong suspicions of anything going on. Friends did start to ask Zack, like, where's Addie? Like, where has she gone? But Zack just told everyone that Addie had gone back to North Carolina and no one suspected a thing, because if there was one thing about Addie is that she was unpredictable. So people were like, yeah, that just sounds like Addie. But Zack's co-workers did notice that he was acting quite strange. Zack also threw himself into partying a lot more as well. He was taking a lot more drugs, he was drinking a lot more alcohol, and he was just completely off the rails at this point. And then on the 17th of October 2006, so roughly around 2 weeks after the murder of Addie, Zack committed suicide by jumping off the 7th floor of a New Orleans hotel. And the police were called to the scene immediately. And when the police inspected the scene, they found that Zack had a note on him in a plastic bag, and the note was in one of Zack's pockets, and the note said, I am going to be looking down so I don't get this wrong. This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send a patrol car to 826 North Rampart Street, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend Addie in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, and a full signed confession from myself, Zack Bowen. The letter was addressed to police only, and alongside the note was also a key to the apartment. And the first thing that they noticed when they entered the apartment was just how cold it was. It was almost like it was like a freezer situation. And the police think that Zack had done that on purpose to preserve Addie's body. They also found writing all over the walls. It was spray painted on. And the messages on the wall said things like, I love her, I'm a total failure. One message also said, look in the oven, with an arrow pointing towards the oven. And then on the oven door, it said, don't open. So the police open the oven and they look on the stove as well. And of course, they do find the body parts of Addie Hall. And the police at first thought cannibalism. They thought that someone has clearly killed someone in order to eat them. And I can understand why they got to that conclusion. But an autopsy on Zack did confirm that he did not consume any of Addie's body parts. They did find another note from Zack in the apartment, and the note said, I killed her at 1 a.m. Thursday the 5th of October. I very calmly strangled her. It was very quick. The rest of the note said, I scared myself not by the action of calmly strangling the woman I've loved for 1.5 years, but by my lack of remorse. I then decided to quit my job and spend the 1,500 cash. I had been happy until I killed myself. Now, of course, following this case, there are a lot of theories as to what happened, because it is like, what the hell? Like, how the hell did this happen? And some of the theories focus on the apartment and where it was situated. So the apartment that Zack and Addie moved into, 826 Rampart Street, was actually located above the Voodoo Spiritual Temple in New Orleans. And a lot of people, or some people, I don't know if it's a lot of people, some people have suspected that Zack was influenced by the spirits, and this is what drove him to commit the murder and to commit such a horrific murder as well. He didn't just kill Addie, like he said he calmly strangled her, whatever, but he had sex with her corpse. He went about his life as if nothing had happened. He then completely chopped her up, cooked her. It's like, how does one escalate to that? Like, I don't know. There have also been reports of paranormal activity in the apartment since the case. People have reported feeling watched. People have reported hearing voices. I think some people have said that the voices are saying things as well that are to do with this case. The temple was then actually damaged in a fire in 2016 and moved to a different location. And then following this, both the temple and the apartment have been made into a museum. And there are actually tours that happen of the apartment because of the murder of Addie and all of the weird things that happen with Zack. People actually go and take a tour of the temple and the apartment. And the oven, just want to say that, is still in the apartment, the exact oven. So yeah, there are some theories that believe that the Voodoo Spiritual Temple was somehow involved. I don't know if I believe that, but a lot of the theories do point towards Zack and just his battle with his inner demons. I mean, we know that Zack was suffering from severe PTSD. We know that his PTSD was triggered after Hurricane Katrina and the military coming in. So I don't think that the murder had anything to do with the Voodoo Spiritual Temple. I mean, I don't really know much about that, so I'm not going to mess with the supernatural world or anything like that. I don't know. And Addie was also abusive, so it could have been one of those situations where he just snapped. Not that I'm saying that the murder is okay. Definitely not saying that. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? Because Addie wasn't the nicest person, but of course she did not deserve to be murdered. No one deserves to be murdered. And of course, this whole story is so sad. I mean, I feel so sorry for Lana and the two children, Jackson and Lily, because they lost their father because of this. So let me know all of your thoughts, theories, and opinions down in the comments, because I need to, tell me, do you think it was the Voodoo Spiritual Temple? Or I don't know, if you know anything about the spiritual temple or anything like that, let me know in the comments, because I actually don't know anything about it. So let me know, please. Also, let me know your case suggestions down below. I need them. Case suggestions, please. I have no idea what cases to do for November, and I like to kind of plan a month ahead. So please let me know what you want to hear in November, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.